Hi, my name's Emma, I'm 34 years old, and this past Thanksgiving, I found out something that broke me in ways I never thought possible. My own parents left everything to my brother in their will, and the way I found out was cruel, humiliating, and unforgettable. Family dinners are never the same after betrayal like that. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about family drama, revenge, and emotional courage. The fork was still in my hand when I heard him say it. My brother Michael sat 2 seats away, his voice loud enough to drown out the laughter around the table. Well, Mom and Dad knew I'd be the one to take care of everything, so of course, they left the whole estate to me. The room didn't fall silent. Not right away. Conversations continued, forks scraped plates, the football game played faintly on the TV in the living room. But inside me, it was like the air had been punched out of my lungs. I froze, gripping that fork so tightly the metal dug into my palm. I wanted to believe I'd misheard. Maybe I caught only part of his brag. Maybe he was joking, or teasing like he always did. But then I looked up, and there it was, his smirk, that smug tilt of his chin, the glint of pride in his eyes. He wanted me to hear it. He wanted me to sit there, stunned, while he paraded his victory in front of the entire family. I'm Emma. I'm 34. And I grew up in the same small Midwestern town where Thanksgiving dinners always meant gathering in my parents' house, eating until we couldn't move, and pretending we were a happy family. But this year was different. Mom had passed away in the spring, Dad a few years earlier, and this was the first Thanksgiving without her. We'd agreed to keep the tradition going at my aunt's house, to honor Mom's memory. And now, here I was sitting at a table where the ghost of favoritism was alive and well. The smell of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie filled the air. Candles flickered on the sideboard. The chatter of cousins and clinking of wine glasses should have made the evening warm and comforting. But all I felt was cold. So cold it spread through my chest, my hands, down to my toes. I couldn't eat. The mashed potatoes on my plate blurred as my eyes burned. I forced a smile when my cousin Jenny asked me to pass the rolls, my hand shaking as I set the basket near her. Michael's voice carried again. Honestly, it makes sense. I've always been the responsible one. I handled Mom's bills after she got sick. I made sure the house was taken care of. Emma, he paused, flicking his eyes toward me. Well, Emma's always been independent. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel, not entirely, but it was sharp enough to slice me open. Independent. That was the family code word for unwanted, for the child who never quite fit, who was expected to figure things out on her own. I remembered birthdays when Mom forgot to bake me a cake, but never forgot Michael's. School plays where Dad clapped the loudest for him, even if my role was bigger. He's just the baby of the family, Mom used to say when I complained. Don't take it personally. But sitting there, watching my brother bask in the spotlight, I realized it was never just about him being the baby. It was about me never being enough. My Aunt Linda leaned across the table and patted Michael's hand. Your parents always knew you were the steady one. You'll carry their legacy well. My chest burned. Legacy. The word stung. It wasn't just money. It was everything my parents had worked their lives for, the home filled with our childhood memories, the keepsakes, the photo albums, even Mom's old jewelry box I used to play with. All of it now belonged to Michael. I wanted to scream, to stand up and shout at them all for treating this like a normal conversation. Didn't they see how cruel it was? Didn't anyone care that I'd been erased from my own family's story? Instead, I sat there, silent, replaying every slight, every moment I'd been pushed aside. My throat tightened, but no words came out. Jenny, bless her heart, tried to change the subject. So Emma, how's work going? Still at the hospital? Her voice was gentle, but the question felt like salt in an open wound. I nodded quickly, forcing out, yes, still there. Even though my inside screamed. Work was fine. Work was stable. But none of that mattered now, not compared to what I'd just lost. Michael cut in again. You know, Emma's always been busy with her job. She probably didn't have time to deal with all the family stuff anyway. Another laugh. Another stab. That was the moment I excused myself. I muttered something about needing more napkins and walked into the kitchen, gripping the counter as soon as I was out of sight. The granite felt cool against my hands, grounding me, stopping me from shaking. My reflection in the window above the sink stared back, flushed cheeks, red eyes, lips pressed tight. I heard voices drifting from the dining room. My cousins whispering. One of them said, "Yeah, we already knew about the will. Michael told us weeks ago." Another voice hushed them. But the words had already pierced me. They knew. Everyone knew. Everyone but me. I pressed my forehead against the glass, fighting the urge to cry. Not here, not in front of them. I wouldn't give Michael that satisfaction. But anger brewed where the tears threatened. Anger at him for flaunting it. Anger at my parents for choosing him. Anger at myself for ever believing I mattered to them the same way he did. The clatter of dishes, the muffled laughter, the warm hum of family chatter. It all sounded so far away, like I was trapped on the outside of a world I no longer belonged to. I straightened slowly, my hands still trembling, and whispered to myself, "No, not this time." That brag of his had changed everything. It wasn't just about the will anymore. It was about me refusing to stay silent, refusing to play the role of the forgotten daughter one more year. I wasn't sure what I'd do next. But I knew this. I would not leave that table the same person who sat down at it. The moment I whispered to myself, "No, not this time," I straightened my shoulders and stepped back toward the dining room. My legs felt heavy, like each step carried years of weight I'd been dragging behind me without realizing it. The laughter from the table had shifted into a low hum, but the sound still scraped against my nerves. When I re-entered the room, Michael glanced up. His smirk widened just slightly, like he'd been waiting for me to return so he could twist the knife again. He leaned back in his chair, one arm draped casually over it, and said, "There she is. I was starting to think you'd left us for good." My jaw clenched, but I forced a smile. "Wouldn't want to miss the show," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. For a moment, silence blanketed the table. My aunt cleared her throat. My cousin's fork clinked against her plate. The pause was brief, but it felt like an eternity. And then, just like that, the chatter picked up again. Safe topics, work updates, travel plans. But under the surface, I felt the crack widening. Michael's words weren't just about the will. They were a trigger. They had unlocked something in me that had been buried for years. Because this wasn't the first time he'd humiliated me in front of everyone. My mind flashed back to high school, senior year, the night of my graduation party. The living room was packed with relatives and neighbors, balloons tied to the staircase, a cake on the counter. I'd been so proud, ready to share my college acceptance letter with everyone. Before I could even pull it out of the envelope, Michael, only a sophomore at the time, announced loudly, "Emma's only going to community college because no real university wanted her." The room had erupted in awkward laughter, my father even chuckling as he patted Michael on the shoulder. I'd stood there, holding the letter that actually said full scholarship, but the moment was ruined. Nobody asked to see it. Nobody cared. That sting, the dismissal of my accomplishments, returned now with full force as I sat across from him. I picked up my glass of water, more for something to do with my hands than actual thirst. The cool rim pressed against my lips, but my throat was too tight to swallow. Michael launched into another story, this one about a business deal he'd closed last month. "It was a big one," he bragged, gesturing with his fork. "I saved the company thousands. The boss said I've got leadership written all over me." Everyone nodded, murmuring approval. Aunt Linda even raised her glass. To Michael, the man of the hour. They toasted. They clinked glasses. I sat frozen. That phrase, "man of the hour," slammed me back to another memory. College. My engagement party. My then fiancé, Daniel, had given a heartfelt toast about our future together. I remember blushing, feeling cherished. But then Michael, barely 20 at the time, stood up and said, "Don't get too excited. Emma can't even stick with a job. How's she going to stick with a husband?" The room had laughed. Daniel had forced a smile. But his hand in mine went cold that night. 2 months later, he broke off the engagement, saying he wasn't sure I was serious enough for marriage. I blinked hard, dragging myself back to the present. My brother's voice filled the air again, louder than everyone else's, always louder. He'd taken center stage so many times in my life that I'd stopped realizing how much space he consumed until now. "Emma," he suddenly said, turning toward me. Remember when Mom used to say I'd be the one to keep the family together? A chuckle rippled through the table. I set my fork down. No, I said softly. I don't remember that. He tilted his head. Really? Guess your memory's slipping. The cousins laughed, and my cheeks flamed. But then Aunt Linda jumped in. Well, Emma, your mother did say you were spirited. Always off doing your own thing. The word spirited rang in my ears. Another coded family insult. They thought it meant unreliable, difficult, too independent to belong. That's when another old wound opened. Christmas, 5 years ago. Mom had bought gifts for everyone. Sweaters, gadgets, jewelry. When it came to me, she handed me a gift card. $50 to a department store. You're hard to shop for, she'd said, her tone dismissive. Meanwhile, Michael had unwrapped a brand new watch. At the time, I told myself not to care. But now, sitting here with his smirk in front of me, all those little cuts resurfaced, sharper than ever. I took a breath and said quietly, funny how selective memory works. Some of us remember the hurt more than the praise. The table stilled again. Michael's smile faltered. Aunt Linda shifted in her chair. Jenny spoke up, her voice tentative. Emma, what do you mean? I locked eyes with Michael. I mean, some of us remember being laughed at, belittled, left out. My voice trembled but didn't break. And it's interesting how those moments never seem to fade. Michael scoffed. Oh, come on. You're being dramatic. But I saw it, the flicker of unease in his eyes. Because he knew. He remembered. And in that silence, memories kept rising like floodwaters. The time he hid my diary and read it out loud to his friends. The time he borrowed money from me and never paid it back, only to brag later about buying a new gaming system. The time Mom told me to be the bigger person. Every single time I called out his cruelty. All of it rushed back, one cut after another, leaving scars that never fully healed. I placed my napkin gently on the table, my heart pounding but my voice steady. You think this is about the will. But it's not. It's about years of being treated like I don't matter. And tonight I'm done pretending it's fine. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. For once, Michael didn't have a quick comeback. His smirk faltered, his fork hovered in midair. Aunt Linda looked away. Jenny's eyes widened. And me? I sat there, breathing deeply, my chest tight but lighter than it had felt in years. Because the old wounds had resurfaced, yes, but instead of burying them again, I had finally spoken them into the open. The words had barely left my mouth when the air in the dining room shifted. You could feel it, thicker, heavier, like the walls themselves had leaned closer to listen. Forks hovered midair, glasses stayed untouched, and for once, my brother didn't have a quick comeback ready. I kept my gaze steady on him, though my pulse hammered in my ears. Years of silence were rattling loose inside me, and it was both terrifying and liberating to let them out in front of everyone. Michael cleared his throat and forced a laugh, that polished, fake kind he used whenever he wanted to brush something off. You've always been sensitive, Emma. We were just joking around. The dismissiveness stung, but I didn't bite yet. Instead, I studied the faces around the table. Aunt Linda had gone pale, her eyes darting between us like she was trying to smooth the situation without saying a word. My cousin Jenny looked nervous, chewing her lip, while Uncle Rick stared down at his plate, as though the green beans had suddenly become the most interesting thing in the world. The only person who seemed unfazed was Michael. He leaned back, stretched his arm over the chair again, and smiled like he still had the upper hand. I placed my napkin slowly across my lap and asked, "Is that what you think? That all of this is just a joke?" The tremor in my voice had been replaced with something sharper. Not loud, not dramatic, just cutting enough to make him blink. He opened his mouth, but Aunt Linda jumped in first. "Why don't we all calm down a little? This is Thanksgiving, after all. We should be grateful." "Grateful for what?" I interrupted, turning my eyes on her. My voice wasn't raised, but the words carried weight. For sitting here, pretending everything's fine when it's not. For listening to Michael brag about something none of us had the decency to discuss openly. Linda's hand fluttered to her pearls, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to argue but thought better of it. The silence stretched. The only sound was the faint crackle of the fireplace in the living room. Finally, my cousin Matt shifted in his chair. "Look," he said carefully, "maybe this isn't the right place to talk about all that. We're just here to have dinner." His attempt at neutrality only fueled the heat rising in my chest. That's convenient, isn't it? Every time Michael humiliates me, it's never the right place. Never the right time. But somehow it's always fine when he's the one talking. The words landed, and I saw it, small but undeniable. The room wasn't just tense anymore. It was divided. A crack was forming, and people were trying to decide which side to step onto. Michael leaned forward then, abandoning his fake calm. "You're making a scene," he hissed, his smile gone. Something inside me snapped. "No, Michael. You made the scene. You made it the moment you decided to announce to everyone that our parents cut me out of their will. You could have said nothing, but you wanted me to hear it this way. You wanted me humiliated." Gasps echoed. Jenny whispered my name, but I ignored her. My brother's face darkened. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "If you weren't so busy running off doing your own thing all these years, maybe they would have trusted you. But they knew I'd be here for them. They knew I'd handle it." That word, trusted, cut me to the bone. I leaned in slightly, enough so he couldn't mistake my resolve. "Don't you dare rewrite the past. I was there for Mom when she was sick. I was the one taking her to appointments, the one making sure she ate when she lost her appetite. You swooped in at the end and played the hero, and now you're acting like you carried the weight of the world." The memory of those long nights flooded back, sitting by Mom's bed, spooning soup she barely touched, watching TV with her just so she wouldn't feel alone. Michael hadn't been there for most of it. He'd only shown up when the decisions about money and property came into play. Aunt Linda finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Emma, sweetheart, maybe your parents just thought Michael was better suited for." "For what?" I snapped, turning toward her. "For being their golden child? For being the one they always praised, no matter what he did." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't answer. The tension wrapped around us tighter, like the walls were closing in. I could see people squirming in their chairs, wishing someone would change the subject, desperate for the easy comfort of mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce. But there was no going back now. Michael's voice dropped low. "Meant only for me, though everyone could hear. You're bitter, Emma. That's all this is. You can't stand that they saw me as the one who deserved it." The smugness returned in his tone, but this time I caught something else beneath it, a flicker of doubt. He was doubling down, but he knew the cracks were showing. I stared at him for a long moment, then said softly, "You know what the sad part is? I'm not even angry about the money. It's the message. It's what it says about how little they valued me. And you sitting there, smirking, proves you were happy to let them think that way." He froze. His face betrayed him for the briefest second, and I knew I'd struck something raw. The clinking of silverware resumed slowly, awkwardly, as if people thought maybe eating would dissolve the discomfort. But it didn't. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Jenny cleared her throat and asked, "Emma, do you want to step outside for a minute? Get some air?" I shook my head. "No. I've stepped outside enough times in my life. Not tonight." The determination in my own words startled me. I'd spent years avoiding conflict, swallowing anger, leaving rooms before they could suffocate me. But not this time. Michael's wife, Lisa, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Her voice was low but clear. "Maybe Emma has a point." Every head turned. Michael whipped toward her. "What?" She met his glare evenly. "I've seen how you talk about her, Mike. The little jokes, the way you brush her off. Maybe you don't notice, but it's there. And it's cruel." The table erupted with murmurs. My chest tightened, a strange mixture of relief and disbelief flooding through me. For the first time, someone other than me had said it out loud. Michael's face flushed red. "You're seriously taking her side right now?" Lisa didn't back down. "I'm saying she's not imagining things." The silence that followed was heavier than any before. Michael's mask cracked further, his composure slipping. I exhaled slowly, my hands trembling under the table but my voice steady when I said, "I've spent my whole life being quiet so no one would feel uncomfortable. Tonight, I'm done being quiet. And just like that, the tension didn't just sit at the table, it owned the table. No cranberry sauce or pumpkin pie could sweeten what had been unleashed. For the first time, Michael wasn't the only voice in the room. And for the first time, I felt like mine finally mattered. The silence that hung over the table was the kind that clung to your skin, heavy and sticky, making every breath harder to take. Forks were frozen in midair, glasses untouched. My brother, Tyler, sat across from me, smirking like he'd already won. His shoulders leaned back in that arrogant way he always carried himself, his tie a little too loose, like he wanted everyone to know he was comfortable while the rest of us squirmed. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I had told myself to wait, to stay calm, to not give him the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. But then he cleared his throat, tapped his fork against his glass like he was about to make a toast, and pushed me too far. "So," he began, loud enough for the entire table to hear, "I think we should all just be honest here. Mom and Dad trusted me because I actually took care of them. I was there when it mattered. Emma was busy, I guess." The smug tilt of his voice made my stomach twist. He wanted me to break. He wanted me to sit there, humiliated, while he painted himself as the golden sun. My eyes burned, but not from tears. This was fury, raw and sharp. I stood so suddenly my chair scraped back against the hardwood floor. The sound was like a gunshot, cutting through the thick air of the dining room. All eyes turned to me, and I felt 100 different emotions pressing against my ribs. Grief, betrayal, rage. But I didn't hesitate. "Don't you dare, Tyler," I snapped, my voice trembling but loud. "Don't you dare rewrite history to make yourself look like the saint." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Emma, come on. You weren't even around. Everyone knows it. I handled everything. That's why Mom and Dad trusted me. That's why they left me everything." I took a step closer to the table, my hands gripping the edge so tight my knuckles whitened. "Trusted you? You mean manipulated them. You hovered around them, whispering in their ears, making them think you were the only one who mattered. I called every single day. I begged to help. You shut me out." My Aunt Linda shifted in her seat, glancing nervously at my uncle. My cousin Sarah put down her fork, staring wide-eyed like she was watching a scene out of a movie. Nobody moved to interrupt. Nobody wanted to get in the middle of it. Tyler leaned forward, his grin widening. "If that's what you need to tell yourself, fine. But the truth is simple. They chose me. They didn't choose you." His words sliced through me, but instead of breaking, I felt something inside me harden. This wasn't just about the will anymore. This was about years of being overshadowed, dismissed, treated like I was always second best. I had swallowed it all down for too long. "You want to talk about truth?" I said, my voice steadier now, louder. "The truth is you weren't there out of love. You were there for control. You never lifted a finger unless it made you look good. Remember the night Dad fell in the bathroom? You weren't home. I was the one who stayed on the phone with Mom until the ambulance came. I was the one who drove through the night just to be there in the morning. But you never mention that, do you? Because it doesn't fit your story." The room shifted. I could see it in their faces, the doubt, the unease. A few people glanced at each other, whispering under their breath. Tyler's smirk faltered just a little, and that was enough to keep me going. "Or how about the bills?" I pressed on, my words sharp and fast. "You bragged about handling them, but half the time, you used their money for yourself. The new car, the vacations. You think no one noticed?" I kept quiet because I didn't want to start a war while they were still alive. "But now you sit here and act like you're the hero? No, Tyler. You're a thief dressed up as the perfect son." His face darkened, and for the first time all night he looked rattled. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," I shot back. "And so does everyone else if they're willing to admit it." The room buzzed with low murmurs. My cousin Sarah avoided Tyler's eyes. My Aunt Linda fidgeted with her napkin. Even my uncle, who usually worshipped the ground Tyler walked on, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I could feel years of resentment rising, spilling out like floodwater. "You always needed to win. Even as kids, it wasn't enough for you to be good at something. You had to be better than me. You had to take everything and leave me with nothing. And now, even in death, You made sure Mom and Dad left me with empty hands. Congratulations, Tyler. You finally did it. You got it all. But you'll never have what you really want. He tilted his head, scowling. And what's that? I leaned in, close enough for only him to hear the first part, but loud enough for the table to catch the ending. Respect. Love. The kind that can't be written into a will. The kind you'll never earn, because deep down, everyone here knows who you really are. Gasps echoed across the table. Someone dropped their fork. My chest heaved, and for a moment, the entire room felt frozen in place. Tyler pushed back his chair and stood, his face flushed red. You think you're so much better? You're pathetic, Emma. Bitter. Jealous. That's all you've ever been. I met his glare without flinching. And you're a liar. A manipulator. And now? Everyone finally sees it. The air was electric, charged like a storm about to break. Nobody dared to speak. It was just me and him, locked in this battle that had been building for years. My hands trembled, but not from fear anymore, from release. From finally letting it out, right here, where everyone could hear. The Thanksgiving turkey sat untouched, plates cold. The family gathering had turned into something else entirely, an unmasking, a reckoning. And I wasn't backing down. The dining room was still as stone. Tyler stood glaring at me, his fists clenched at his sides, his face blotched with anger. Everyone else sat frozen, like they were afraid to breathe too loudly. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't scare me, it gave me strength. I straightened my shoulders, my voice cutting through the thick air. I'm done being quiet. I'm done letting you speak for me, twist things, make me smaller. That ends tonight. Tyler opened his mouth to fire back, but I lifted my hand, stopping him. No. You've had your stage for years. It's my turn. The words came easier now, flowing like they'd been waiting inside me all along. My chest rose and fell, steady, strong. I glanced around the table, looking each family member in the eye. I loved Mom and Dad as much as anyone here, I said. Maybe more than anyone, because I loved them without conditions. I didn't need their money. I didn't need recognition. I just wanted them to know they mattered. And I will not let my love be erased because you want to play the role of the dutiful son. Linda lowered her gaze, her napkin twisting in her lap. My uncle cleared his throat but said nothing. Even Sarah, who had always idolized Tyler, looked at me with wide, questioning eyes. Tyler scoffed. This is pathetic. You think standing here, throwing a tantrum, makes you the better person? I locked eyes with him. No. What makes me better is that I don't need to tear you down to feel whole. I've spent years letting your shadow define me. Not anymore. I took a step back from the table, breathing in the charged air. My hands trembled, but I didn't hide it. The trembling was proof I was alive, proof this moment mattered. Do you know what I realized tonight? I continued, my voice lower now, but sharper. That will you cling to doesn't define me. It doesn't change who I am or what I gave to this family. It doesn't erase the nights I stayed up on the phone with Mom when she was lonely. It doesn't erase the times I picked up groceries or drove across states just to sit by their side. That paper doesn't hold the truth. I do. A lump rose in my throat, but I forced the words out anyway. I won't beg for scraps of validation from people who never wanted to see me. And I won't let you rewrite my story to make yourself look like a king. You can have the house, the car, the money, but you'll never have my voice again. That's mine, and I'm taking it back. For the first time, Tyler's confidence faltered. His smirk was gone. He shifted his weight, his jaw tight. He wasn't used to me standing tall, wasn't used to me holding my ground without apology. Emma, Sarah whispered, her voice almost breaking. I didn't know. I turned toward her, softer now. None of you could have known. I never spoke up. I thought keeping the peace was more important than telling the truth. But silence only ever served him. Not me. I could feel my heart pounding, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was release. Years of swallowed words, buried anger, stifled grief. They were all spilling out, and with every sentence, I felt lighter. Tyler tried again, his tone harsher. So what, you think you're some kind of martyr now? They trusted me because I earned it. You were just background noise. I smiled. actually smiled because for once his words didn't crush me. Then I'll be background noise no longer. You may control the will, but you don't control me. I turned to the rest of the family, my voice steady and clear. I don't expect anyone here to pick sides. I'm not asking for that. I just need to be heard, maybe for the first time in years. I won't carry his version of the story anymore. I have my own, and I'll tell it, even if I have to tell it alone. The weight of the room shifted. Nobody clapped, nobody shouted. But there was something in the air, acknowledgement, maybe even respect. It was subtle, but I felt it. Tyler muttered something under his breath and dropped back into his chair, his bravado cracked. He stabbed at the cold turkey like it had personally betrayed him, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. I didn't sit back down. I couldn't. I stood there for a long moment, my breath steadying, my chest lighter. Then I picked up my coat from the back of my chair. I'm leaving, I said, my voice calm. I won't waste another holiday pretending this family is what it used to be. I hope one day we can sit at a table without lies between us. But tonight I choose peace. My peace. I walked toward the door, my heels clicking against the floorboards. Nobody stopped me. Nobody dared. As I reached the hallway, I heard Sarah's voice again, soft but clear. Emma, thank you. I turned back just enough to give her a small nod. No tears, no breakdown, just quiet strength. Then I stepped out into the cold night air. The sky was black, stars scattered faintly above. The chill hit my skin, sharp and clean, like a baptism. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of silence pressing me down. The house behind me buzzed faintly with murmurs, but I didn't need to know what was being said. It wasn't about them anymore. This was about me. I walked to my car, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes, each step a declaration. The inheritance might have slipped through my hands, but something far more valuable was finally mine. The freedom to speak, the freedom to live without shrinking for someone else's comfort. When I slid into the driver's seat, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face looked tired, worn from the night, but my eyes were alive. I whispered to myself, not for anyone else to hear, just for me. They took everything they could, but not my voice. Never again. And with that, I turned the key, the engine humming to life, carrying me forward into something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger. Not grief. Hope.